Hello, my name is Randy Cook. I'm the president of the National Organization for Raw Materials. I'd like to thank Jamie Walton for inviting us to present these remarks. It's gracious that he did so. It's very short notice, and we really appreciate the opportunity to deliver some remarks. I'm speaking not just as the president of N.O.R.M, but also as a member of the Parity Research Group, who I'll mention at the end of this video, so that you can contact them as well as me if you'd like to ask questions and get more information. The title of these remarks is Ag Parity, Sound Money, and the NEED Act. So we are going to talk about agricultural parity. We're going to talk about sound money, and we're going to talk about how the NEED Act needs to achieve its goals. Let's begin with the ag parity. There's a lot of history surrounding ag parity. There's a lot of positive, negative, and useless information about it. We like to think that we're the folks who have the background that relates to actual history. As National Organization for Raw Materials, we're the inheritors of all of the research of Carl Wilkin and others who put this information together 80 years ago, 82 years ago. And so we are the authority when it comes to ag parity. Ag parity is nothing more than an insurance policy for our national income, our earnings in wealth production, so that what we produce as wealth, when correctly monetized, produces solvency in our nation. It may seem a little odd, but that's how it works. Ag parity per se is based upon the observations, the statistical analysis of the pricing of raw materials as they enter our economy, and the fact that all of the raw materials that enter our economy every year, 70% of that volume is, in dollar values, is off our farms, which is agricultural production. And when the price of raw materials at the first point of sale is in balance with the costs of labor and capital in the rest of the economy, you cannot have a depression. Inflation and deflation are avoided. The purchasing power of the money is maintained at a mainly constant level over time, and we're talking time there is more than generational. In other words, we can maintain the purchasing power of our money over more than a 30 to 35 year span, perhaps even out to 100 years or more. There's no reason why the calculations cannot be extended to include longer intervals of time. Ag parity, how does it work? It works this way. It is a floor under the market of basic storable agricultural commodities, calculated at parity levels, and that's an arithmetical process. The formula relates a base period in which our economy displayed and demonstrated prosperous characteristics with debt shrinking, earnings increasing, production in a steady level, steadily advancing level, progress happening in the benefit to the people. So by taking the basic relationships, statistical relationships in the economy during those periods of time and relating those ratiometric analyses to today's conditions, we can observe the ebb and flow of our solvency, our progress, our prosperity over time, and we can know what to do to move ourselves away from the dire consequences we now face and towards solvency as a nation. This has been proven correct because we actually used ag parity from 1942 through 1952 as a policy adopted and enacted by Congress, signed by the President, and it worked for us during those years helped us fight and win a war that we didn't know we would be able to fight, and kept us out of a depression following the war. We should talk about how the actual ag parity process works, and what it does is there is a loan made available to the Commodity Credit Corporation, which is a federal corporation, part of USDA, in that the Secretary of Agriculture sits on the board of directors of the Commodity Credit Corporation. And the loans to the farmers are available when they deliver their crops to an elevator. There's essentially a Commodity Credit Corporation representative offering a 90% parity loan, which means a loan to the farmer for 90% of parity on what he has delivered in his truck or his tanker truck or his bale wagon. And it's offered on basic storable commodities. So it sets a floor under the price. In other words, if the elevator operator wants some of that commodity that he can sell into commercial channels, he has to at least bid as much as the Commodity Credit Corporation agent, who's offering a 90% loan, 90% of parity loan. So he has to bid at least that much, and in fact perhaps outbid it by a penny, who knows. Anyway, that's the establishment of the floor underneath the commodity market pricing structure. And that's how it works. The loan is callable not at a date certain in the future, but at a price in the marketplace. When the price of that commodity rises to 100% of parity, then the 90% parity loan is called due. And so that's the process by which the markets under our basic wealth, in the hierarchy of wealth, we start off with air, water, and then food, and then we move to shelter and clothing, and then we can build our entertainments and our refinements on top of all those wealth-produced items. So food is the primary need beyond air and water, and so it is the basic earnings of our economy. If we don't have an economy that can produce, process, and distribute food so that it is available both physically and economically to our inhabitants, then we aren't much of a country. And we've got a lot of work to do just to simply observe and recognize and respect the fact that human beings need to eat. So let's assume we have done that between ourselves, and let's also assume here that what I was told the other day is true, that nobody cares about history, and that everybody wants a solution, and they want it now, and that's fine, we can go ahead. I don't happen to agree with that assessment, but if history comes later, then fine. Let's let history come later. Let's talk about solutions. The ag parity solution was tried here in this country from 1942 to 52 by policy, as I said, and it worked. And then by 52 we decided as a nation to avoid that policy, to put that policy to death by bits and pieces, little by little, step by step, and now the parity ratio for agriculture indicates that farmers are paid 32 cents on every dollar's worth of wealth they produce. And that's a far cry from a 90% parity loan in the marketplace. And so that's how our national income has been handed over to those who would bring money into circulation through the debt instrument process and have captured all of that debt to their own benefit as private individuals, rather than ensuring our domestic income on a solvent basis for the entire nation. And so that brings us to the sound money aspect of this, which is that sound money needs to be maintained purchasing power over time, constant purchasing power over time. If we can't do that, then we cheat our succeeding generations, aside from cheating ourselves, and depending on how fast it happens. So we need to use that goal as a primary item to achieve for monetary reform. We certainly have not been maintaining constant purchasing power over time under the Federal Reserve, particularly since 1971, when we went off the international gold standard and went to floating exchange rates between national currencies. So the one other aspect of sound money is that the dollar be the same for every inhabitant in the nation. As I mentioned, the ag parity ratio indicates that the farmer's dollar is worth 32 cents. For every dollar of wealth he produces, he receives a payment of 32 cents. If you want to try that out on yourself, imagine that when you cash your paycheck the next time you receive one, that you take 32% of that and put that in your deposit and take the rest of it and throw it away. Put it down the garbage disposal and see how far you'll make it, and understand from that point why agriculture and the rural communities have been drying up and dying on the vine in our nation. That is the entire pressure that has been depopulating the countryside as far as working farms and farm families go, and rural communities which depend upon the earnings of those producers. And yet food, as I said, is the third item on the list of the hierarchy of needs. So the maintenance of constant purchasing power and the maintenance of a 100-cent dollar are two aspects of sound money that need to be maintained. And so the NEED Act, as a new piece of legislation establishing a monetary authority to take care of establishing our money as issued by the government and not by a private bank, needs to hold these aspects of sound money as achievable goals, as focuses for them to achieve through their activities, and to move towards making these changes is obviously what we're all working for. So if we're not intending to achieve sound money by the establishment of a monetary authority, what are we working to achieve here? So this is our point of view. We need ag parity to help ensure the establishment of money being regulated to maintain its purchasing power and to maintain its equanimity, its exchangeability, equal exchange value across all of the segments of our economy. And so by establishing a monetary authority to take over from the Federal Reserve, a private bank, and to put the power of the constitutional money back within the control and agency of Congress, then the process of ag parity and the principles of sound money need to be reestablished. We need to understand them so that the monetary authority doesn't get out of our control as the Federal Reserve has. And so it's incumbent upon all of us to not only learn it, but teach it, and to aid you in getting answers to your questions about things I haven't covered. There is another aspect here called our equity of exchange, equity of trade proposal for international trade, which I won't go into here, but it's included. We have considered that and come up with a plan, not a new plan. It's a standard analysis. It's been proposed by others. And anyway, it revolves around parity tariffs. A tariff, properly understood, is not a trade measure. It's a monetary measure. It adjusts the variant purchasing power of foreign currencies against our domestic currency, and actually can improve the standard of living of trading partners rather than exploiting their labor for the benefit of private corporate advantage, which is essentially what happens today. And results in a negative impact on our balance of trade and charges the atmosphere with ill feelings both domestically and amongst our trading partners abroad. Questions, if you have questions, we can move to that segment now. Some of the folks on the Parity Research Group will be available for answering questions. If they can't answer them, I'd be happy to engage in it. I apologize for not being in person. This is a heavy harvest time for me. Part of my annual income is worked out right here at this time, and I can't get too far away from home base here at the moment. But like I said at the start, I appreciate Jamie's invitation to present these remarks. And let me tell you who the Parity Research Group is. Sue Peters, Geraldine Perry, Joe Bongiovanni, Stephen Walsh, Debbie Hillman, Mary Sanderson, and Ann Weber, and me, Randy Cook, President of the National Organization for Raw Materials. So thank you, and enjoy the conference.